Has anyone ever asked you what your legacy will be? I find that most people don't even think about it until someone asks. I never thought about mine until my VP asked me about 3 years ago, Roy, what will your legacy be? Well, I went off and thought about that, and I came back with this response. I want to develop future leaders and then transplant them around the company. And I'm proud to say I did that. So let's define legacy. Well, it's said to be an idea, an object, or values that's left behind for others to follow. The sooner you start thinking about your legacy, the better. I speak to high school and college students all the time, and I tell them, look, try to press fast forward in your mind here. Visualize a few years out. What will you be? Who will you be? Where will you be? Thinking about your legacy begins to shape who you are, what you are. It's what Stephen Covey meant when he wrote, begin with the end in mind. If you think college is too soon to start thinking about your legacy, think again. How many times have we heard or read about some athlete who had fantastic promise, great potential, got a scholarship, came in, and then got in trouble with the law? Nobody wanted to have anything to do with them after that. They ended up blowing an entire career because of something that was very short-sighted. Rather than thinking longer term, they thought about just what was going to happen right then. A little fun, and it's always fun and games until the cops show up. I want to tell you about someone I got to know at Dell. And actually, this person was the president of the company from 1986 to 1990. And it wasn't Michael Dell. This guy's certainly not as famous as Michael, but of all the leaders that I ever met there, he was one of the most personable. I remember the day that I met him, he came strolling across the parking lot, coming up to the front door, and I just happened to be there, and he stuck out his hand and said, "Hi, I'm Lee." This fellow's name was Lee Walker. Lee had an amazing ability to remember names. Not only people that worked there, but their husbands, their wives, girlfriends, children, what have you. And he really established a connection with that skill. Now, along with being able to remember people's names, Lee was a phenomenal listener. He asked for input from people at all levels in the company. And frankly, people gave it. And when they did, he actually listened. Imagine that. Lee is still a busy guy. He's the new chairman of the Lance Armstrong Foundation here. And here's another thing I learned from him. Lee will do just about anything if it's aligned with a cause that he's passionate about. See, he's one that's thought about this in a long-term way. So when someone comes to him with an idea or asking for help on virtually anything, Lee determines if that fits with his values, with what's important to him. If it does, great. If it doesn't, he's got a simple answer. No. N-O, 2 letters. So one thing I learned there was that it's easy to say no when you know what to say yes to. So what are your next steps? Well, begin to think about this and start putting it down on paper. It may take you a little while, may not. But here's some questions. What do you want to learn? Where do you want to go? Who do you want to be? What do you want to be? What's really important to you? If what you're doing day to day at work doesn't really, jazz you, then honestly, I'm going to suggest you change that. They call it work for a reason, and we all need it. But it's got to be more than just a paycheck. It's got to be something that you feel is worth doing, and something that really is going to align with who you are and what you want to be. Okay, let's wrap this up. A man named Ben Zander is the conductor of the Boston Philharmonic Orchestra, and he wrote a book titled The Art of Possibility. Now, in that book, Mr. Zander was talking about his students and his desire to give them an A grade for the school year, and how he could see each one of them had the potential to get that grade. So here's what he did. At the beginning of the school year, sat all the kids down, had a chat with them, and said, "Look, I believe in every one of you, and I know you can get an A grade. So here's what you need to do. Within the next 2 weeks, write a letter that begins with these words. Dear Mr. Zander, I got an A this year because," fill in the blank. By doing that, these kids were able to fast forward, to envision, what things were going to be like in May and all the things they had done to deserve an A. This is what I'm talking about here. So begin to write your letter. In fact, if you want, you can send it to me. I'd love to read it, and I'd love to help you to get to that A grade. Thanks for listening.